Let's continue now, everybody, with the next panel, for which I would like to introduce my long-term colleague at the Brussels Energy Club, Miss Nadežda Kokotović, who is initially a long-term member of the Brussels Energy Club. She was the chief of cabinet of the CEO of a company called NIS, which is the biggest energy company and conventional energy company in the Balkans, based in Serbia. And then Nadežda became director of the Brussels Energy Club at the end of 2018. So Nadežda, it's fantastic to have you here again in person to lead this next panel. We've got a very good group of panelists online from international financial institutions, speakers from the region, from the investor community. So Nadežda, I hand over to you for this next panel. Welcome.
Thank you, Marat. Thanks a lot. Now we have a panel devoted to donors, technical assistance, and investments for regional level development. And I will start the panel with Stefano Signore, who is the head of unit in DG International Partnerships in the European Commission. Stefano is in charge of climate change and sustainable energy, as well as nuclear safety. But maybe just for colleagues who are not based in Brussels and not know the structure of the European Commission very well, maybe we can say that DG International Partnership is in charge of the European Union global commitments, such as SDGs and Paris Climate Agreement. So what I would like to ask you, Stefano, is we had the EU strategy for Central Asia adopted exactly 4 years ago, but the world has changed substantially since then. In the strategy, there was several priorities related to this sector that we are talking about today. It's to promote regulatory convergence, so to step up cooperation in renewable energy, improve reciprocity in market access, and so on and so on. Can you tell us what has changed in these 4 years? How do you see the role of the EU today in promoting this particular sector of energy in Central Asian countries?
Yeah. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for this invitation. Really happy to be able to discuss topics related to energy cooperation in Central Asia. I mean, your question is really very relevant. I mean, a lot of things happened these last 4 years, as we know. First of all, with the COVID and with the, of course, the global, let's say, economic turbulence related to what COVID brought about. But let's say if we look more closely at the European Union and Central Asia relationships, I think that what I would like to mention in particular are two initiatives. The first one is Global Gateway, which was formally adopted by the Commission towards the end of 2021. And the second one is Repower EU. Global Gateway is important because I think with this initiative, the European Union has reaffirmed its commitment to support deployment of sustainable infrastructure around the world. Probably in past years, before 2020, there was, let's say, less emphasis on supporting hard infrastructure. And Global Gateway reaffirmed the importance to support sustainable infrastructure in areas like energy, transport, digital. But of course, it's not only about hard infrastructure, it's also about the support we want to provide to regulatory environment, capacity building, market integration, so as basically the infrastructure deployment is made in a way which is sustainable, which is economical, and which support broader economic and social objectives. And this is a bit at the heart of the European offer that we do ourselves, but not alone. We do with our European partners, which are, let's say, the member states, the banks like EBRD, EIB, and all together we promote this approach, which is called Team Europe. And I will come to that also in relation in particular to Central Asia. The second initiative that I would like to mention is Repower EU, which was adopted by the Commission in May last year as a response to, let's say, the brutal aggression from Russia to Ukraine, in order to basically counter the energy crisis that erupted soon after the war. And this is very relevant again for this conversation, because we will see that the objectives that are stated in Repower EU are very relevant also for our cooperation with Central Asia countries. Because the objective of Repower EU is basically to accelerate deployment of renewable energy, to accelerate progress on energy efficiency, and to diversify the supply of certain fossil fuel sources, in particular gas, in order basically to get rid of the dependency on Russian gas. At the moment, in February 22, the European Union was importing some 40% of the total gas from Russia. And this also is important in terms of what this entails for our cooperation with those countries. Now, when it comes to what we ourselves want to focus on, many of the things which have also been discussed in the previous panel, we know that the region is particularly well endowed with wind and solar, some 5% of the total world capacity of wind and solar. There is also large hydro power capacity, in particular in countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Therefore, we want to support deployment of renewables, which are becoming more and more, let's say, basically the cheapest source of energy, but also regional integration. I think regional integration is particularly important for us, is where also we as European have experience. And the more, let's say, those countries do develop an integrated energy market, the more also this will allow to sustain, let's say, energy security, but also to allow increased balancing of different renewable energy sources with more conventional sources. We do this through a Team Europe approach. As I said, we have launched in November last year a Team Europe initiative on water, energy, and climate change, because we know that in particular in this region, the nexus between energy and water is particularly relevant. You cannot really talk about energy without talking about water, and vice versa. Let's say, together with our member state, we want to basically enhance the support we can provide to those countries, in particular through technical assistance. There are a number of technical assistance projects, like, you know, the SECA, Sustainable Energy Connectivity in Central Asia, but more broadly also through a number of other programs that we are going to launch. Of course, this comes in support of a de-risking, financial de-risking toolbox that we are developing with our banks, with our partners, again, like EBRD and EIB. Let me say that in this region, as of 2010, through a number of facility investment, we have mobilized close to 700 million in support of energy cooperation through our, let's say, partner financial institution, as I said, in particular, EBRD. So let me stop here because I want to abuse of the time, but definitely happy to come back to some of those elements later on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this overview, because with this overview, you gave us a guideline actually how to listen to presentations from our 3 representatives of banks today, because this is actually the framework in which they operate their programs. So I would like to continue with the presentation from Ekaterina Galitsyna. Ekaterina is representative of the bank KfW, a German development bank, a bank from the German government, one of the world's leading development banks. I read that you provided 167 billion in 2022 alone. 1/3 of it was used for climate and environmental protection. But when I got the presentation from you, I saw that you represent KfW IPEX-Bank. So for me, it was not really clear what kind of subsidiary are you in this holding KfW? So I would like you to tell us the place of your bank on the overall structure, and what are your strategies and eligibility criteria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nadežda. Could you, as already mentioned through Nadežda, I am from the KfW banking group, and I'm responsible for the activities of KfW IPEX-Bank. And IPEX stands for International Project and Export Finance. So KfW is a German state-owned bank, and we promote Germany, of course, with different products, with different in different sectors, I would say, but we are still very active internationally, and we have our 3 aims, I would say so, like KfW Development Bank. It's all about development countries and countries with transition economy. Then we have our, could you please go to the next slide, please? So this is the structure of the KfW exactly. So, and then you can see on the right side, this development aid, we finance development. This is about KfW Development Bank, where we are working only on the governmental level with the governments of the guest countries. And then we have our another subsidiary, KfW, in this structure of KfW DG. This stands for the supporting of private sector in developing countries. So, as already mentioned, I'm from the KfW IPEX-Bank. So we support the German and the European economy, and we can work with the both, with the governmental institutions and with the private sector. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So exactly, we as KfW IPEX-Bank, we are state-owned and belongs to the KfW banking group, and we have our special mandate to support the export industry, to support the infrastructure and transport projects. Of course, very big topic for us is environmental and climate protection and securing raw materials supplies. So it's all about very CapEx intensive sectors. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So you can see that we as KfW banking group, we are the safest bank in the world. And as KfW IPEX-Bank, we are one of the best banks as for export and project finance. So please go to the next slide. Exactly. And here it's another slide about our sectors where we are active. And you can see that indeed the projects in power, environmental resources and recycling, infrastructure, this is a very big topic in our financing. And you can see that we are working on these very CapEx intensive projects with our special product, long-term financing. And I think, speaking about the region, Central Asia, this is most important for such countries to get the long-term financing. Could you please go to the next slide? Exactly. As for the products, how can we be sure that this long-term financing would be provided? Normally, we use the ECA-backed financing. So we go through this export credit agencies cover. Then we are in the framework of OECD consensus. Of course, we have another instruments like trade and commodity finance, project and asset financing. We are working together with international financial institutions, like already mentioned through Stefano. We are working very closely together with European Investment Bank and with EBRD, of course, with other development banks, which are very, very active in the region. So could you please go to the next slide? So once again, this is about our projects, our instruments, like we can do corporate finance, we can do, of course, project finance, structured finance, asset financing, ECA-backed financing. Very important is that we can provide on lending of KfW promotion loans, of course, and we are working normally in the countries like Central Asia with two structures. We can go with the clients directly in direct financing, or we can use the on lending structure, of course, through the local banks. Could you please go to the next slide? So, and then these are my thoughts about this potential for Central Asia. What can we see? And as I can assume, you have already discussed a lot of these particular topics in the first session with Marat. Now the Central Asia has the framework conditions in most countries, where we see that the government of the countries is doing a lot of work, a lot of potential developments for attracting their investors to the region. So we can see the most framework conditions are there in Central Asia. Then we can see, of course, this big variety of stakeholders. Of course, we see a lot of investments already from the Gulf countries. We see a lot of activities of Chinese companies and Chinese investors in Central Asia. Then we see still a lot of further investments from the Russian companies. And now where we are supporting the European companies and where we can see the activities, we see this in particular countries like Uzbekistan and in Kazakhstan. And I think you will discuss a very interesting big project in the last session. This is the project of Svevind company. This is a German-based company, and they are now very active, this very ambitious project in Kazakhstan. As for Uzbekistan, we are discussing some interesting projects in solar sector with German companies like Meyer Burger and other companies. So I think this is a very, very good possibility for further investors to go to the region. Because if a lot of stakeholders, a lot of investors are there, this is a proof for further investments, of course. So the next point from my side is, please stay on the same slide, please. So this possibility to implement the best available technologies. And I think this is very important, yeah, because you don't need to do the steps what, for example, Europe and other countries did in the past to go to these best available technologies. The Central Asia region has now this possibility just to use all the best available technologies from European countries, from other countries. And of course, you have in the Central Asia these great possibilities for localization in the region and to establish such hubs, for example. The next topic is that this interesting combination of international financial institutions
Ekaterina.
the variety of investors. Sorry?
No, we lost you for a second. Yes, now
okay.
we can hear you.
So you see here this very interesting combination, because you see here a lot of international financial institutions which are presented in the region. Then you see a lot of commercial banks which are operating worldwide and very different investors. And I think this is a unique situation here in the Central Asia that you can combine all of these opportunities in the region. And of course, thanks to that, you have here in the Central Asia well-developed variety of possible financial instruments and their combinations, where you can where you can combine these possibilities, for example, to use the financing from EBRD and EIB, and then from commercial banks, yeah. And this is, I think, really very unique situation where you can combine all of these instruments. So, and let's go to the next slide. So, exactly. So, why ECA? Because as already mentioned, ECA, like Export Credit Agency cover, enables for the banks this long-term financing, because if you have this cover from top countries, like in Germany we have Julia Hermes, in other countries we have other export credit agencies to support the export of the country, then you have, of course, this possibility for the banks like us to go in long-term financing. And we as KfW IPEX-Bank, we have our best relationships not only with Julia Hermes, which is, as already mentioned, the German export credit agency for supporting the German economy. We have best relations with about 20 export credit agencies to support the economies from these countries, the most European countries. So, and of course, this is all in the framework of OECD consensus. And as you may know, there are some new rules starting from July 15th that for climate-friendly projects, yeah, it will be a very attractive condition to go for long-term cover. I think it would be till 22 years possible to cover such projects. It means that the banks, the commercial banks like us in this case, that we can provide the countries like in Central Asia, the governmental structures or the private companies or the project finance structures with this really long-term financing, like 22 years for climate-friendly projects. So, and let's go to the next slide, please. So this is about the structure, how we can use this ECA cover finance. We have, for example, an European exporter, and we have the local buyer. And on the left side, you see this export credit agency. So in this case, the export credit agency can cover the risk of the local buyer so that we as KfW IPEX-Bank can provide this local buyer with long-term financing. And the European exporter could be competitive on the market if the European exporter can offer to the local buyer not only these services, but the financing as well. And we have another scheme on the next slide where you have not only, could you please go to the next slide, where you have, for example, another stakeholder in this scheme, like local bank, which would be the borrower on the local market from us. This is the same scheme, but if, for example, the local buyer, the company in Central Asia, is not ready to attract the financing directly from the Western bank, then we can go through the local bank and provide the local bank with this on-lending structure.
Ekaterina, I think thank you very much for this detailed explanation. I think it's very relevant. I would just like to ask you, just if I understood correctly, your bank is participating in the Svevind project on hydrogen. You can maybe close the presentation now.
No, it's not. I think it's the early phase of this project Svevind, but these are the project which we are considering on the market. Yes, for now we see that this very interesting initiative with this Svevind project, because it's not only about wind farms in Kazakhstan, it's about hydrogen projects. Yes. It's very interesting, and I think till the colleagues from Svevind will develop the project, it takes some time, of course, but still it's very interesting for this really long-term financing. And another possibility is for European companies to localize in the region, of course. And we are discussing now some such projects in Uzbekistan, for example.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, also for this clarification, because I'm sure that the next presentation can be interesting for you, because we have Daulet Zhakupov. Daulet is a senior engineer in Kazmunaygas Engineering. It's a center of competence at this company, and the center of competences in hydrogen in Kazakhstan. So you established the first such R&D center in Kazakhstan, and you are also open for cooperation with companies, as you are writing on your slide, but also with the banks. So can you tell us in maybe 5 to 6 minutes, Daulet, what this R&D center is about when it comes to hydrogen?
Yes, good afternoon, dear participants. Could you please share my screen, my slides?
Yeah, just a second. Give us a second.
So let's take this time and use it. So first of all, thank for the organizers for such an opportunity to present the first hydrogen R&D center in the Kazakhstan. And some of you might be surprised, but like we're still working for 1.5 years. And today I would like to share the key areas of our action and some of our achievements and our plans for the future. So the previous presenter has mentioned a lot about the Svevind project, but it's not only the only project which we are considering in our country nowadays. So the next slide, please. So first of all, why our country, which is famous as for the vast amount of the traditional fossil fuels, and we're exporters of the oil, gas, coal, and all other stuff. So why we're considering the possibility of the hydrogen energy employment? So there are 3 key drivers. So first of all, we are like—
If you can just speak up, Daulet, if you can just speak up a little.
Oh, yes. So the first driver is the export potential. We're uniquely located between the Republic of China and European Union. And both these huge players, stakeholders, they have already accepted the plans for the deployment of the hydrogen energy. Second driver is the carbon taxes. We have our own emissions trading system and also CBAM, which might affect our export commodities. And the third driver is the decarbonization. And as you might know, February this year, our state has accepted the strategy to become carbon neutral by 2060, and hydrogen is one of the tools to achieve these ambitious plans. Next slide. A little information about our department. We were established after the instructions of the head of the state. In 2021, our president has provided instructions for the Kazmunaygas, which is our mother company, to open the center for the hydrogen energy. And we have started our actions last April. And by now we are Department of Alternative Energy, and we're considering not only the hydrogen related projects, but also some decarbonization activities for our mother companies related to the energy efficiency increasing and also the carbon capture, utilization, and storage. The next slide. If you have attended the previous panel, you might have seen this slide already, but here I want to highlight that KMG, as our mother company, has accepted the very ambitious goal to reduce the carbon footprint by 15% by 2031, and the base year is 2019. And when we're talking about this aim, we're considering only Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. But as a long-term projects, we are working in the field of the low-carbon hydrogen energy. And here I should state that not only the green one, the green hydrogen, but also the blue one is of our interest nowadays. The next slide, please. So this is our achievement. Along with the consulting of our mother company, we have established a laboratory for the hydrogen technologies research in Atrau city. And we are actively collaborating with both national, local and international universities and R&D centers. And we are here to provide a comprehensive analysis of the hydrogen technologies for our customer. Also, there are some achievements of us. We are actively participating in the conferences here and abroad. We have published 5 research papers. We're organizing the courses for the hydrogen energy. Just maybe 2 weeks ago, we have organized the symposium, international symposium for the Kazakhstan stakeholders. Also, we have some strategic partnership with international collaborators, and one of our biggest achievement is the standardization work. When we started our journey, we have found that there is a huge gap in the regulation side, and just recently 7 hydrogen-related standards were included to the national standardization plan. And also we are applying actively for the research funding. Next slide, please. So this is our vision on the potential of the hydrogen energy market development in Kazakhstan, and for the short-term aims. We see that it's crucial to provide equal playing rules in terms of the legislation standards for the hydrogen projects. Also, we're actively supporting the R&D in the field of the production, transportation, storage, and application of the hydrogen. Also, we're planning to start the pilot projects. But for the long-term future, our aim is to make our mother company, Kazmegas, a comprehensive player in the hydrogen energy market in the world. Next slide. This is the photos of our laboratory. We're actively purchasing equipment this year. Next slide. And our plans for this year, we have both practical studies and research aims. So in field of the green hydrogen, we are working on the study of the water availability for the green hydrogen production. As you know, Kazakhstan is facing the water scarcity problems, and according to our projections, this problem might be one of the barriers to implement the projects, the gigascale project as the swimming project. So as I already mentioned, we have conducted international seminar for the hydrogen energy. We are developing the concepts of the blue ammonia and blue methanol production on our assets. Also, we're working in the standardization of the CCUS and hydrogen fields in the Kazakhstan. And the research aims of us for this year, as I have already mentioned, we are purchasing the equipment for our laboratory, and our laboratory tests will start soon. And also we are planning to publish scientific papers this year just to provide the insights for the development of the market here in Kazakhstan. So next slide, please. So thank you for your attention. If you have any suggestions, proposals, we are really open to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Daulet. I saw the logo of EBRD on your slide. I also saw the
Yes.
logo of Annie. Annie is
Yes.
our participant in the fourth panel, and Svevind is also our participant and speaker in this fourth panel. So I'm sure that we will also get back to this topic later during the day. But I would like to ask a question to Vadim Sinitsa. Vadim is a principal banker for energy in Eurasia in Sustainable Infrastructure Group for EBRD. He is a banking project manager involved in private and sovereign projects in renewable power generation and power transmission in Uzbekistan, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan. Vadim leads negotiations and financial, legal, and technical due diligence, monitors project implementation, and so on. He is also familiar with policy dialogues on renewables and power reforms. Vadim, I saw that you are also an observer to the Kazakh Energy, the association that Mr. Kapanov presented this morning. We saw your logo now. It seems like you're quite popular in the region. Can you tell us what are your priority projects in the region? Because I looked at your website. I saw that you're present in all countries. What are the priority projects when it comes to energy and climate?
Nadežda, thank you very much for the question and for the opportunity actually to present in this very interesting event. You probably know that EBRD was established in 1991 as a bank to help transition the former common economy in the former Soviet Union to a more market-oriented economy. And actually, from the beginning, from the inception of the EBRD, sustainability has been our focus. But now the focus on the carbon economy and on clean energy has really been strengthened. And since 1st of January 2023, EBRD is only financing projects that are aligned with the Paris Agreement. In this respect, transition to a low carbon economy is one of our key mandates. And we're very glad to see a very big progress in this respect in Central Asia. In this respect, our strategic priorities include scaling up of renewables, of course, upgrading and expanding networks and storages, phasing out of fossil fuels and promoting zero carbon fuels. And in the last year, we invested around 6.4 billion euros in green projects across all our countries of operations and reached 50% of green financing.
Thank you.
I can continue talking about the projects, but please let me know if you have any particular questions on that.
Well, I would like to ask you something that our speakers today were talking about as issues that are of key importance. And Mr. Kapanov, who obviously has more than 20 years of experience in this area, in this region, he said that transnational grid would be of the key importance for the region. Are you into these projects of regional coverage? Have you ever considered something like that?
Thank you. Indeed, it's a very good question, and we're looking at the transmission infrastructure, and would be open to consider, interregional interconnection projects if there are any live projects in this respect. But we working on this in this sector, we financed a couple of projects quite recently, and I can perhaps list these projects for the audience if it would be helpful.
Please. Of course.
Just recently we participated in a bond transaction with the KEGOK, which is a transmission system operator of Kazakhstan, where we invested funds in the bond issued by KEGOK in March this year. And the funds of this bond that is marketed as a green bond locally in Kazakhstan will be used to rehabilitate the transmission system in Kazakhstan, helping scaling up renewables. Also, in the end of last year, in December, we signed a sovereign loan agreement with the government of Mongolia to provide a loan to construct a 220 kilometers high voltage transmission line between Choir and Sanshan. And you may know that Mongolia is one of the very prospective countries in terms of the solar and wind resources, and it's included in the North Asian super grid project that has been developed mainly by Japan, but also by other regional players. And this project would be very important from the strategic perspective if we talk about this long-term initiative. We can we're also, I mean, looking at different projects, and there are a number of projects in Uzbekistan that we have financed. We have participated in unbundling of Uzbek Energo and providing active policy dialogue in this respect as well. And we just recently signed, and I think this project was mentioned by the representative of the government of Uzbekistan. We recently signed the 900 megawatt solar PV development in Uzbekistan. These are 3 projects developed by Masdar that are quite large and very, very important projects for the government of Uzbekistan, procured by competitive procurement developed by IFC and ADB. This is very important for the region, for the development of renewables. Right. Yeah, maybe also just maybe to mention another important project that we signed in the end of last year. This is also very, very crucial project for the city of Almaty, where they're developing a project to actually modernize this HP2 in Almaty to help reduce the pollution in the city. The project is essentially replacement of the coal by the natural gas in terms of the primary fuel. This is expected to result in huge environmental benefits for the city of Almaty, and people who have been in Almaty during the winter times, they know that the level of the air pollution could be quite significant, and we hope that this project will help in this respect to the city of Almaty.
Thank you, Vadim. I hope that in the next round of questions, I will be able to ask you something else that I have in my mind now. But since we are maybe running out of time, I would like to call Mr. Alexander Antonyuk from the European Investment Bank. Dr. Alexander Antonyuk is working in the energy sector in charge of the Eastern Partnership countries. And he is also, I think, one of the BREC speakers from previous years. I don't remember those days, but Marat told me so. I read that EIB financed 36 billion euros in green lending, and that last year you also created EIB Global, the new development finance arm for activities beyond European Union. The aim of this EIB Global is to support EU external policies and priorities, and will still be guided by your bank's climate action and environmental sustainability goals. What would that mean for Central Asian region?
Yes, hello, yeah, can you hear me well? So I don't have...
Excellent, yes.
Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, let me quickly introduce myself and what EIB does generally and in Central Asia. So my name is Alexander Antonyuk. I coordinate, you said it correctly, our energy sector activities in Eastern Partnership, but increasingly in Central Asia as well. So I've been in the bank for 10 years, and before that I worked for the International Energy Agency, who you know all very well. In 2022, so let me first talk about EIB very briefly. You mentioned some statistics. So in fact, last year we were the largest MDB in the world. So last year our volume was 65 billion of loans. In terms of energy, last year actually was 19 billion. So 36 is probably across a few last years. But I think last year was record-breaking for energy sector investments, because previous years it was in the range of 14-15 billion. So last year was 30% of all lending went to energy. In my time, at least, it's unprecedented. In 2022, last year, you're right, EIB Global was created as a development branch of European Investment Bank, although, of course, we had projects in developing countries outside of the EU before that. Last year, EIB Global's investments reached 10.8 billion euros. So as a climate bank, we stopped financing fossil fuels in 2019. And now our energy sector concentrates, investments in energy sector concentrate essentially in three areas: energy efficiency, renewables, and networks. So last year, 7 billion of loans went to energy efficiency, another 7 billion to renewables, and 5 billion to networks. This breakdown kind of roughly corresponds to what you need to do for decarbonization of the world and individual countries. So DG INPA mentioned Global Gateway Initiative. Yeah, so we're very keen to, but we're participating in this. We're part of the initiative as one of the implementing parties. And the area of focus for as part of Global Gateway Initiative and Team Europe is the same as generally in our energy sector. So renewables, energy efficiency, and networks. Now in Central Asia, so we started work in Central Asia in 2011, started our activities. We have a fast-growing portfolio of 1 billion euros so far. And recently we approved opening 2 offices in Central Asia, which should facilitate project implementation quite a lot. In terms of existing projects, I'll highlight a few. Uzbekistan solar was mentioned, I think has been mentioned a few times now. So we're co-financiers of this year's approved 3 solar plants in Uzbekistan. But in 2021, we also financed the Total Eren 1 megawatt project also in Uzbekistan, located in Samarkand area. In Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, we finance electricity transmission infrastructure as part of Kaza 1000 project, which envisages actually trade all the way to Afghanistan and Pakistan in the future. We also financed the Karakum hydro plant. We call it climate resilience rehabilitation. Okay, looking forward, we're in discussions in Tajikistan on this mega project of Ragun hydro generation. So World Bank is a leading financier there for now. In renewables, so of course, this is a prime area of development. So all depends here on the structure of PPAs, on the bankability of projects, and how auctions are designed. So auctions have been mentioned before me. So there are, so if projects are done, if auctions are designed in a professional way, like Skyline Solar, World Bank, or by ADB or EBRD, so normally this is bankable for us and we can finance such projects. So we hope that this trend continues in Central Asia, and there are more and more projects that come out as a result of auctions. We also participate and kind of share experience with World Bank for the Central Asia electricity markets integration, because we financed almost all the interconnectors in the European Union, so we have a lot of experience in electricity markets. So we're sharing kind of our views, what could be done in Central Asia, given all the sensitivities about creating such a common space for electricity. Now, briefly about energy efficiency. So it's a big area of decarbonization. So to take Kazakhstan as an example, 47% of primary energy demand is attributed to buildings. So buildings is the single largest source of CO2 emissions in Kazakhstan, and the majority of buildings are residential. So it's important for decarbonization efforts to do something in energy efficiency of buildings, but it's very difficult. So if you split energy efficiency projects into public buildings and residential buildings, public buildings are the easier part, because you can have a sovereign loan or sovereign guarantee. You could have a strong ministry or strong municipalities behind public buildings projects. In residential, it's much more difficult. So we're working. Yeah, so I call it the highest hanging fruit of decarbonization. But also I call it the largest hanging fruit, because the CO2 emissions is the largest source of CO2 emissions. So we're working hard with our GIZ partners to develop energy efficiency projects in the region. So one thing that I'd like listeners to take away, and maybe we can continue discussions, is that energy efficiency in residential sector requires public finance support. So even in the European Union, when we have residential energy efficiency projects, and we have a lot, usually there are grants or budgetary support. In Central Asia, fiscal space is constrained, so it's more difficult to find money in the budget for such projects. So perhaps with colleagues from DG INTPA or other donors, we could discuss how to allocate funds, grants, and other sources for energy efficiency in Central Asia, because that would help with decarbonization a lot. Okay, so I can stop here, and yeah, if you want to cover quickly hydrogen, we can maybe discuss it in Q&A.
We can discuss hydrogen in Q&A, definitely. But if you were asked to consider let's say the common regional problem, then it would be an energy efficiency, in your opinion, yeah? Something that is the biggest the biggest amount of emissions come from the buildings, but it's the most difficult to solve, even more difficult than electricity transmission networks, and yeah, in your opinion.
Exactly. It's not to say that renewables and networks are easy to do, but there are success stories and there are solutions, like taking renewables. So solutions for structuring and financing kind of are existing. So if it's a project company, so all the risks are contained in the project, and they're mitigated through the heavy kind of legal machinery. Or it could be a corporate developer with a good credit rating, then it's also possible to finance. Networks are usually regulated, transmission networks are regulated and usually state-owned companies. If the government is behind the project and the management of the company behind, cash flows are easy because it's a regulated business. So in residential energy efficiency, it's a bit trickier. Yeah, there aren't kind of a common standard solutions to this, and there is a problem that it needs kind of additional public financing in the form of grants or budget.
Thank you. I hope that we will get some also questions about this from the audience later, but I would like to give floor now to Paulius Kuncinas, who is the representative of Covalis Capital Fund, a London-based global asset manager focused on infrastructure, renewables, utilities. Your fund is investing in electricity companies in Europe. What conditions Central Asian countries need to satisfy to attract your investments and your involvements in the region? What kind of projects would you like to invest in Central Asia?
Thank you, Nadežda. Thank you, Marat. I hope you can hear me. I just want to check the sound. And I'm sorry I cannot be with you there in person. I'm here in Vilnius, in fact. We're about to have meet the Tikhonovskaya. We're having a meeting here, and the NATO is coming up, so that's why I'm not in Brussels.
No
but
problem.
let me, that's my excuse, sorry. Focusing, so I'm here to represent the private sector perspective, because I got involved in renewables actually 15 years ago when it was uninvestable, when the only way to get involved was through feed-in tariff, through subsidies. Now we're in the world that's largely free of subsidies. It's good to say that in solar and in wind, we can pretty much talk about grid parity, meaning you don't need subsidies. And actually, as an investor, I prefer not to have subsidies. We want to have a standalone case where it's based on tariffs, pure commercial tariffs. But what's really the main issue right now is that there's a lot of choice. There's a lot of competition, different jurisdictions offering different packages. And I think it's fair to say the first condition every investor is looking for stability. So when I look at the jurisdiction and I have explored opportunities in Central Asia, the number one issue for me is the security of the power purchasing agreement, the PPA. So I would prefer a lower return, but a more stable return over a longer period, because what it's important to understand from a financial investment community perspective, solar renewables is becoming a fixed income product. So it's becoming more and more like a commodity, very similar to commercial real estate in London. I like to use that analogy. Mm-hmm. So people there's a lot of, so just to be clear, there's a lot of capital available. Right now, every asset manager is looking for ESG premium. So environmental, social governance, and renewables is E. It's the easiest one to address. So there's plenty of liquidity, and actually, ironically, compared to 15 years ago, there's shortage of supply. So I think here Central Asia is very attractive because I know from, for instance, a recent trip to Azerbaijan, for instance, that even oil and gas rich countries understand that it's better to export their hydrocarbons and produce renewable energy locally. Mm-hmm. And they have the land, they have the local capital, they have experience working with international major energy companies, and they have infrastructure. But what I found is still missing is there's no enough legal, basically, instruments of how to attract foreign investors. And in the specific case of Azerbaijan, I think the tariffs are too low. They're not competitive internationally. So that was the main issue that experienced. Having said that, there are very interesting opportunities in using renewables, for instance, for hydrogen exports, especially where you have already existing gas infrastructure. I think there's interest from financial investors in hydrogen to Europe. I think that's called green hydrogen. So there's definitely an opportunity there. Of course, I just said I don't want subsidies on tariff, but however, given that we live in the world of where US has Inflation Reduction Act, $1 trillion on the table, given that Germany is giving Intel $9 billion, of course, incentives will attract investors, but incentives, again, not on tariff, but on CapEx, on actual investment. So these will make a difference. So that's my kind of short feedback on what investors are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. We have many representatives from Central Asian countries, and you got an applause as well, a round of applause. We have many people from Central Asian countries here, and I think they were listening carefully to you. In this respect, we heard from almost all speakers today about hydrogen. We also heard this morning from the ambassador that Kazakhstan has signed a partnership or something like that with the European Union on hydrogen, critical raw materials, and batteries. Everyone is talking about the Svevind project. Stefano, what is your comment on that?
Well, let me first say that from what we heard, we see that there is a lot of potential. There is also capital available, and we have a number of development banks like EIB, EBRD, KfW that are ready to help. So we need to make it sure that this can happen at scale. And for me, if you want, the green hydrogen topic is not a standing alone one. It's really deeply connected to this conversation about renewable energy, because when we write renewable hydrogen, we have to read renewable energy. In essence, is about deploying at scale more solar, more wind. It's not something else. You know, I mean, you reach, let's say, the molecule by adding a massive amount of solar and wind. Therefore, we need to keep this in mind. Then when you have added this massive amount of solar and wind, the next question mark, okay, what do I do with it? First question mark, is there anything that is needed for the domestic market? It is a relevant question mark. Second question mark, do I dispatch the electrons or the molecule? And then, of course, there is also quite relevant question mark. Would it make sense to have a cable or, let's say, to dispatch the molecule through other means? What we know is that, for sure, Kazakhstan is a country that has a very big potential to produce green hydrogen at scale. Not differently from other countries, there is the issue of the logistic, of the infrastructure. When you have to think about exporting big quantities of green hydrogen, of course, the question about infrastructure is key. And on that, I think there are still a number of issues that we need to look at, that, you know, studies that need to be carried out. There is additional work to do. But from the point of view of the long-term perspective, I think that it is unquestionable that Kazakhstan is one of the countries, third countries, that has the biggest potential to become a green hydrogen producer and exporter.
Would you like to comment on something else that the European banks and private funds told today?
Yes, I think that, look, there were many elements which were interesting. And I think in particular, the one on energy efficiency was very interesting because, of course, renewable is good, but you still have to make, let's say, good use of the energy you produce. And the cheaper electron is the one that you don't use. Therefore, I think that in this region, there is a lot to do on energy efficiency. By the way, this is an area where we have invested heavily over the years because we have, through the EIB, through EBRD, or other institution, supported a number of projects on energy efficiency. And of course, the building sector is very difficult. We see also in Europe that is one of the sectors that is more difficult and sensitive to decarbonize. I'm not sure we can just do with grants.
Sensitive
socially, yes, from a social point of view, because there is expenditure that, let's say, households have to encounter. But I think that is not only through public subsidies that you can achieve the goal. If you pay the electricity 1 cent per kilowatt, you will never make it, because to some extent, even though, of course, you need to protect those social layers that are more vulnerable, so of course, you know, let's say the poorest one, with ways where basically the public side put the money the end in the pockets. But if you don't address the tariff issue, it will be impossible, in my view, to work sustainably on energy efficiency.
But that was my also last question to you. Do you think that the cheap electricity in the region is maybe the biggest obstacle, in addition to regulatory stability and so on? But do you think
I think that is work ongoing. I think that in a number of countries, we see that there is serious work ongoing on tariffs. Let's also pay tribute to the work that is ongoing for industrial actors, but not only. This work has to continue. If we want to tap into the opportunities that the speakers were mentioning in terms of mobilizing capital, this work has to continue in order to bring the tariff as much as possible, the average tariff as much as possible to cost-reflective ones. And then, of course, there is the social issue, which, I mean, has to be tackled. But definitely the average tariff, especially in certain countries, have to be reviewed, so as, let's say, those projects can go to scale and can, let's say, target a wider portion of the population.
Thank you.